The first step was in trying to conceptualize how to make The Wiz a motion picture, which was a slow process. And as we were trying to work that out with the studio and with special effects and so on, I got a call. I was awakened at about 5 in the morning by a call from Berry Gordy. Diana Ross had just awakened him with this crazy notion that she should play Dorothy in The Wiz. And I said, what? 5 o'clock in the morning, she wants to play Dorothy in The Wiz? And by sunup, I thought it was a great idea. And by the afternoon, Diana Ross was playing Dorothy in The Wiz, and the deal was closed. And it was at that point that we began to look for a very, very major director to handle the project. It had grown from an idea of a small fantasy to a large major motion picture.
I think I know another reason why The Wiz and some other good films like it may not have worked with white audiences, never drew them. I think white audiences got an impression that if it had a black cast, the movie had to be anti-white. That was a little bit true in the early 70s, but then some artists decided to change things around. The black films grew and changed. We named a whole bunch of films that were encompassing the entire audience.
Everybody who went had a good time at those films.
Yes. The white audience didn't pick up on it.
They felt either I'm going to have to go and be told what a terrible white person I am, or I'm going to have to go and get some kind of dreary, serious social message. In the meantime, the blacks have moved right beyond that into Hollywood entertainment movies, but nobody followed them. Nobody got the message.
The story on everyone's mind continues to be the absence of police officers in Quahog. Sir, as a citizen, how has this affected you?
The police are gone? Oh my God, we're finally safe!
Stay on the scene, he's got a heart singing so joyfully. Just look about, you owe it to yourself to check it out. Can you feel a brand new day? Can you feel a brand new day? Can you feel a brand new day? Can you feel a brand new day?
Come on in, ease on down the road. Come on in, ease on down the road. Don't you carry nothing that might be a load. Come on, ease on down the road.
Ba-ba-da.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome back. Happy Black History Month. I want to say that right off the bat. It's always great to celebrate Black people in the shortest month of the year. I'm rolling my eyes ironically. How are you, Molly? Molly almost had COVID and RJ did have COVID. So we are living in the end times of this podcast.
The best part was that I just listened to, we're recording this as the Evan Hansen episode just came out a couple days ago. And we recorded that super early, early December, that we were like, wow, you're listening to this in the new year. Hopefully everything's better. It was
Didn't
not.
age well. I was also saying to Adam, I'm really glad that we clarified it was December when we said that the show had just reopened, because I'm pretty sure it's probably not open right now.
I know, yeah. When I was listening, I was like, oh, I don't think it's reopening, or I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
But we're back. Happy February.
Happy February.
Molly, what did you have? Were you just generally ill?
Yeah,
cold?
I don't know. Yeah, some sort of a respiratory something, but I got a negative PCR test. So all I know is that it wasn't COVID, but it could be a multitude of other things.
So the wildest part about RJ getting COVID was that he realized that he was positive when we were at Miranda's house in Iowa. So I still had to drive back with him for 6 hours in the car back to Chicago. And then once we got home, then we isolated. In the car, I was like, there's no point in wearing mask. If I get it, I'm going to get it in the car. I somehow did not get it.
Wow. Do you think maybe
3 negative rapids and 1 negative PCR.
Yeah, maybe you had an asymptomatic case not that long ago. So you just have temporary.
I mean,
pain.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, my symptoms were Omicron, so I didn't. It was just like a very bad sinus infection for like 2-3 days, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, it was shocking how Adam. But you know what? It was nice because I got the bed all by myself
I slept on the couch
for a long time.
for like
Hopefully,
a
when
weekend.
Nice
you're all
extended
listening
vacation.
to this, you'll be like, "Oh, I don't want to hear about COVID anymore because now we're done with it by mid-February."
Yeah, by
It's over now.
mid-February, COVID is over.
Today is January 17th. This drops on February 15th, and COVID will be done. She won't. We will all
We're
have been
putting it
mind
into the
wiped.
universe.
Yeah. That's
Someone
what
just
I'm
needed
manifesting.
someone needed to secret the COVID away just before
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
Only someone had said
No.
that.
If only someone just wrote it down on their boards. But they did
Yeah,
it.
nobody's
Oh.
vision boarded COVID going away, and that's why it's still around.
Fauci, how did you miss this?
Fauci. Oh my god. Okay, well today it is my turn to do the summarization challenge, and I took Molly's cue and I actually wrote a summarization because I want to be fair to our listeners who obviously have no background context for the Wizard of Oz. So I really want to make sure that they understand the nuanced plot.
Brand new story.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so you time me.
Okay, Adam, this is your 1-minute summary of The Wiz, which is the movie that we're doing, and it starts right now.
Dorothy is a 24-year-old elementary school teacher who is shy and reserved with a dog named Toto. During a freak blizzard, she is blown to Oz and crushes Evermean, the Wicked Witch of the East. Miss One, the Good Witch of the South, gives Dorothy Evermean's silver slippers and tells her not to take them off until she gets home. She's sent on a quest to find her way home via the Wiz, who lives in the Emerald City, by way of the Yellow Brick Road. Along the way, she is joined by the Scarecrow, who longs for a brain, the Tin Man, who longs for a heart, and the Cowardly Lion, who longs for courage. Upon her meeting with the Wiz, she is informed she must kill Evelyn, the Wicked Witch of the West, before he agrees to help her home. She proceeds to follow the instructions, but finds upon her return to the Emerald City that the Wiz is nothing but a fraud politician from New Jersey. However, she reminds her friends that they have the power within themselves to rise above, so long as they just believe. Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, tells Dorothy that her silver slippers can get her home, and she's had the power to do so all along. Then she sings a ballad, and the movie ends.
And that's 1 minute.
Not bad.
It felt a little wild writing the summary to this thing that literally everybody on Earth knows, but that's fine.
With some names changed.
Yeah.
Like The Wiz.
The Wiz.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the movie feels very different from The Wizard of Oz for sure, but the plot is in summary form is the same, essentially.
Right.
Is this like the first time we've done a movie that, like, this is the first time in Showgays where we've, like, it's the same story, but a new movie musical? Because we've done Wizard of Oz and then this.
Yeah,
Essentially.
I would think
I
so.
mean,
Because we didn't do, technically, we never did the original West Side Story.
That's true, yeah.
Mm. But that's not even, that's not even really the same thing because West Side Story was like, it was the same musical.
Yeah, true.
I mean, they
True.
changed the book, but the songs were all the same for the most part,
Right.
whereas this is like a totally different reimagining of the same story. So I think that's
Right.
going to be unique for that reason. And soon we might do another one whenever the what's it called?
Oh,
Wicked
Wicked.
movie comes out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is, you know,
She's
the greatest story ever told.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
love this story for whatever reason.
RJ, what do you know about The Wiz? What is your relationship to The Wiz?
Okay, so when I wrote down my background of my relationship with The Wiz, Adam had to be like, I cannot believe this is the same thing again. But I can't deny it. It is American Idol. American Idol introduced me to the songs Home and
You Can't Win.
You Can't Win. American Idol season 2, they had a movie themed night and 2 contestants sang that. And it was funny because Adam was being like, I can't believe that, like, it's the American Idol again. And I was being like, well, every week you got to be introduced to like 12 new songs from like either a specific genre or a specific whatever. And like someone growing up that obviously didn't, have any background, but previously it was like it's kind of like how a lot of people know like 80s, 90s popular songs because of Glee.
That is a specific reference to calling me out. So don't let that slide by undetected.
There are so many references just of like the 80s and 90s, the whole world, that I only know because of jokes about them on The Simpsons that I watched as a child.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I feel like this phenomenon is not limited to music.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, American Idol is definitely like my gateway into it. Kimberly Locke, who was the 3rd place finalist on season 2, sang Home. And the song, it was like the top 11 night or whatever. And she also sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow that same season. So I thought that was funny too. Like, just like Showgaze, she tracked her career with 2 songs from The Greatest Story Ever Told. And she sang Home and Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And that, honestly, like, those 2 songs were kind of like what carried me into just knowing The Wiz. Home, obviously, is the main one, because like after that, everyone in American Idol, every Black woman in American Idol who could like belt sang Home, essentially. But it wasn't until The Wiz live on NBC was the first time I actually saw the full production of The Wiz.
Which was 2015.
Yeah.
So my first introduction to the music at all of The Wiz is when I was a kid, I used to do dance classes, and at one of our dance recitals, one of the other jazz classes did a dance piece, whatever. They did a dance to Ease on Down the Road.
A dance. Yeah.
They did a dance to Ease on Down the Road, which is like such a it's like such an instantly snappy, like gets in your head kind of song. So I knew that song for a long time, and it is like very much one of those songs that I will just find myself singing to myself with like no other prompts, but I'm just like doing laundry and all of a sudden I'm humming that song. So it's totally an earworm. But my first introduction to watching the movie, I'm going to estimate I was like around 12-ish. So I was like a kid, but not like a little kid. And I watched it on TV. It was just like happened to be on, and I feel like I had heard of it before. So I was like, oh yeah, I want to watch this movie. And I find this movie very, very unsettling. And so I told Adam and RJ before this that I procrastinated on watching it because I am the scaredy cat on this episode. I find the setting, the fantasy version of Oz that they construct in this to be really, really bizarre and like a bad nightmare. And I would say a good 50% of this movie is like Child Catcher and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang levels.
Oh my God.
Enjoying what's happening on the screen for me. So I'll be honest, my notes on this one are light because I just can't even fully engage. There's just something about the world that they made. I have some theories about what specifically I find so unsettling about it. Amazing creative work making it, but I have trouble sinking into this world.
Yeah. Acid really is incredible. You know what I mean? Just highly recommend. I don't recommend doing acid and watching this movie, though. I think that would be probably kill yourself.
Is that watching it reminds me of all the acid trips that I had, before I was 12, and it just brings back those memories.
Trauma.
Yeah, I will say, like, watching the movie, the only time I've seen it before us watching it is, if it will be on TV, and I would just pick up pieces of it. So this was my first time watching it from beginning to end. I had seen like scenes specifically, mostly towards the end. And then obviously I had seen like Diana Ross squelting, belting, just face, just Home I've seen that before too.
So
Adam.
Adam's
gonna be our little expert on the Wiz. Adam's.
This is not good. I had never seen this movie in its entirety until this viewing. So I do want to say that. But I'm very familiar with The Wiz because I was the Scarecrow in high school.
Adam!
Now I want to say Bloomington, Indiana.
No, South Bend.
Not Bloomington. All right, South Bend.
And Adam, how many white people were in the?
Okay, so I want to be clear. that I went to a very unique high school because we did 2 musicals a year, 1 play, and a set of 1.
It was like the magnet school?
We were the magnet school for the fine arts. Right. So this was my junior year, this was our spring musical. That year, frustratingly, our department, if you auditioned, you were in the show. It was one of those. And because we were the magnet school, we had a lot of people audition. So the year we did Cinderella, there were 120 people in the show, which is
my God,
too many people.
I think the most we ever did was 80. We did Bio Birdie and it was 80.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine more than that.
There were barely even 120 people that went to my high school, so
yeah. So this year, I think we had fewer people audition for this one. But of the leads, which it's obviously Dorothy, Scarecrow, Tin Man Wizard, all of the speaking roles in the show, it was only me and one other person were white. Me and then Glinda were the only white people. Everybody else was black.
That's very good. Yeah.
And now, did they paint me orange? They did. That did happen. And they gave me a black curly wig.
Oh.
And it's not great. It's really not great. Now, it wasn't supposed to be, I will say the paint job was more clown than it was representing a specific color. It was just I'm more of a burnt orange kind of ensemble. So I'm
fall.
Right, you're made of fabric.
It's fall in the wheat fields. And
I think the wig was a bold choice.
I wonder, that's where you really lost me.
I think the wig is a little Jackson family adjacent.
It's not great. So anyway, that's yes. So I've been in the Wiz.
Everyone, please cancel Adam for when he
please cancel me.
Everyone
cancel me.
Yes.
But I had seen a lot of the songs of this musical because very high school theater, they'll in your first day after you do a table read, they'll play the movie or whatever.
Yeah.
For this one, they only played specific songs because the movie is so different from the stage production that they were I don't want you to think that this is what we're doing. So they really just fast forwarded to each song and then just showed the song and then moved on. So this was my first time watching the full thing. So the entire subway sequence was a real moment for me. And if I had been anything younger than maybe 16, I probably would have crapped my pants watching it.
Absolutely.
We didn't really when we did The Wizard of Oz originally, I never really got into the history of the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, written by L. Frank Baum. So let me just do a brief overview. So The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was written by L. Frank Baum. It was published May 17th, 1900. He was trying to take classic, Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, but Americanize them. So he added farming and industrialization, which was he's from the Midwest, so that made sense for him. But it was also he tried to take out a lot of the violence with the morality aspect of it. So bad things happen to bad people, that kind of is just removed. And it's more just everything just happens, and this is very surface level, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain that other than. But since we're on the topic of canceling people, myself included, I do want to just bring up, apropos of nothing, this information I found out about L. Frank Baum. In that, in 1890, during the Wounded Knee Massacre, he wrote 2 editorials asserting that the safety of white settlers depended on the wholesale genocide of American Indians.
Oh, no.
Wow.
The first piece was published in December 20th, 1895, days after the killing of Lakota Sioux Holy Man Sitting Bull. A piece opined that with Sitting Bull's death, quote, the nobility of the redskin had been extinguished, And the safety of the frontier would not be established until there was total annihilation of the remaining Native Americans, who he claimed lived as miserable wretches. Baum said that their extermination should not be regretted, and their elimination would do justice to the many characteristics of their ancestors. There's another one that was also not great, but I just bring it up to be like, I didn't know this, and The Wizard of Oz is such a staple of American children's literature and media that it's been retold. Like, if you go to the adaptations of The Wizard of Oz on like Wikipedia page, there's like an entire page, and it's like pages, like links and links and links of like things that have been referenced in like TV shows and movies and like operas and plays and other works in other countries, and to never have heard of this is very interesting. So we've all learned something today. I do want to point out that two of his ancestors, they can't be that old. How old do you have to be an ancestor? How far back does it need to go to qualify as ancestor?
Well,
Two of
they
his
would be his descendants. Yeah,
there we go.
He would be their ancestor.
Yeah, there we go. Two of his descendants, like in 2014, like apologized and like said this whole thing of like, we don't condone anything he said in regards to the treatment of Native Americans in America, blah, blah, blah. So.
Well, you'd certainly hope that they felt that before 2014, but probably it was that somebody reached out to them to ask for a comment. But yeah, True. Certainly you'd hope you'd be like, great-great-grandfather's opinion about Native Americans. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that my ancestors who were around at that time probably had bad opinions about that topic. So yeah. I'll just preemptively apologize, whatever they thought about it.
Yeah, my ancestors lived in Omaha, Nebraska. So there's no way they thought great stuff about Native Americans.
Yep.
Delete your tweets, everyone. That's the lesson.
Frank Baum should have deleted grandfather's tweets.
Yeah. Make sure it goes all the way back.
Yeah.
Don't just delete most recent.
No, I mean, we should say, don't actually delete the tweets. Like, it's good that we know this. Thank you, Adam, for bringing it up. And I think that now we should all whenever we're engaging with Wizard of Oz, just have this in our minds of like, are there any problematic things being suggested here?
Yeah.
Regarding sort of like who belongs in society and who doesn't, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to say, I don't think any good has ever come from the opinion editorial section of a newspaper ever in the history of mankind. And I think it should be abolished.
I think people have probably argued for progressive causes in an opinion section before.
Opinions should be abolished.
Opinions should be abolished. Stop.
Get rid of Twitter.
Stop lifting up opinions. Anyway, this is the last episode of this podcast in which we only talk about our opinions. Okay, so this musical is based on the book. I do want to point that out. It is not based on The Wizard of Oz, the 1939 film. It's based on the book.
Oh, I saw some things that said that it did somewhat base it on the musical. I think it was taken into consideration.
So I think there are a lot of specifics that point to the fact that this is more drawn on the book than it is drawn. I think there were some things that they changed specifically because of the 1939 film. But I think for the most part, like the fact that they added the Kalita Queen or the Kalitas as like a general set piece, which is like a thing specifically from the book. And other like the silver slippers being silver and not ruby red, because that's what it is in the book. Other stuff like that, I think.
Can you clarify what the Kalitas are?
Yeah, so they're only in the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. They are there's like a bunch of stuff that happens to them as they're on this journey. They are a half tiger, half bear monster that like chase the four. In this movie, it is the subway sequence, which has like replaced the Kalita sequence from the stage adaptation. But
gotcha. Yeah. I think though, I think that makes sense that probably what they did was they started from the source book, but they also felt like they had to keep the MGM. I put it as in my notes, I had it as the MGM movie to like clarify which one we're talking about. Mm-hmm. That like that it seems like that was influencing them because obviously it was so big, so popular.
Yeah, that's true. So the music in The Wiz is mostly by Charlie Smalls. There is a Luther Vandross song, Brand New Day. Gotta love it. It's a great song. And the book, the script is by William F. Brown. And then it opened originally on January 5th, 1975 on Broadway and closed January 28th, 1979. So like a good 4-year run. Stephanie Mills played Dorothy the entire time. It won a bunch of awards at the Tonys. So it won Best Musical, it won Best Original Score, it won Best Performance by a Featured Actor for The Lion, it won Best Performance by a Featured Actress for, I think that, I didn't write down who that was, but I think Dee Dee
Bridgewater.
I don't know who she played. Hold on, let me do a in the moment
Fact check.
Okay, she played Glinda. And
wait, wasn't Lena Horne Glinda, or is
This
that
is
a
the-
different character?
This is the Broadway.
Oh, Broadway. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. It won Best Direction of a Musical. It won Best Cinematography and Best Costume Design. And it was also nominated for Best Book of a Musical. So it like swept the year at the Tonys.
A real Evan Hansen of its time.
Stephanie Mills played Dorothy, as I said, and she played the entire run. And then she even played Dorothy in the 1984 revival.
Oh.
And she is now like a super famous R&B singer. And then Andre DeShields,
Hades Town's own
Andre DeShields played the original Wiz. And then I also just wanted to make a note that Ted Ross, who played the Lion, and Mabel King, who played Evelyn, both are the only two people in the original production that reprised their roles for the film.
Gotcha.
So the Lion and the Wicked Witch of the West, that's it. Those are the only ones that count.
I just wanted to add, as we're talking about the stage musical, that I learned in some of my reading that it was not initially a hit and that they had to kind of like put a bunch of effort towards getting people to come see it. So apparently it did really poorly at opening. They posted their closing notice on opening night. But this is from an article from Alfred L. Martin Jr., and it says, through ticket giveaways, Black church outreach, and a cash infusion of $1.1 million from 20th Century Fox to aid in marketing and production, The Wiz ultimately became a Broadway hit. So they kind of had to like gin up the ticket sales, and then eventually it ran for long enough it could get the positive critical reception that it got. But interestingly, Fox gave them that money so that they could have the film option, but then by the time that came around, Fox backed out and let the option expire because they were like, there was nervousness about whether or not it would be a successful film.
Was the hesitation on the show opening and not doing well, was that linked to anything specific, like the book, the music, or just like no interest?
Why people didn't see it when it first opened?
Yeah.
I don't know anything specifically. I read that like when it did its tryout in Baltimore, that it like did okay. But it wasn't like it got enough buzz to like, obviously this is pre-internet. I mean, it feels silly to say that, but like the way marketing happens now is so characteristically different from how marketing for especially like theater in New York was happening. This is also pre like out of state tourists coming to New York to see shows. Like this era of Broadway is only like the thing that out of staters would get is you would make the record and then they would just listen to the record at home. Like this is why My Fair Lady was like a huge record sale for like years, just because that was the only way they could like possibly see the show. And tourists didn't go to New York in the same way that like tourists go to New York today. So it was really only like the tri-state area that they were like trying to appeal to, really. So if you just don't have enough, if you aren't able to like, if people don't know about it, then, you know, they're not going to go see it. So
I think there's just something interesting of the like, in order to create it, the success that it was on Broadway, they had to kind of make it like a cultural experience. it's like, you know, like engaging community to go see the show, like that. And then like, now like the show is like a standard or like a very important touch point of like, I feel like Black American like culture in like musicals at the very least, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think also like it's very possible that race played a part in that, obviously. I mean, the article that I was quoting from was actually mostly about the critical reception of the movie and how race played a role in that. But I think, I mean, part of it is like, what's more bankable than like we redid Wizard of Oz? Like it seems pretty like familiar story that people would want to go see. So like I think we have to acknowledge that it's a possibility that that white people felt like a show with an all Black cast might not have sort of been for them. I don't know though.
I would like to say, though, that there was this era of Broadway where they had a few shows that were, like, Black-specific casts. Like, this wasn't the only one at the time. I don't remember the titles of the other ones, so it sounds like I'm making it up on the spot. But I'll include them in the show notes of the other shows that were around in the mid-'70s that were, like, all Black casts. So it wasn't like The Wiz was, like, the first one to ever try this thing.
And do you mean too that they were like they were redoing a music, they were rewriting a musical to be from a Black perspective and have a Black cast, or just like we're redoing Hello Dolly with an all Black cast?
No, they were like new musicals that had all Black casts. Yeah,
gotcha.
The movie is directed by Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet directed like 12 Angry Men. He directed Dog Day Afternoon. He directed where is it? The Verdict. Just a bunch of like 60s, 70s dramas. He also did a bunch of like theater work as well. He had directed a bunch of theater work, but he was really known at the time. He was specifically known as a director who would bring things in on time and in budget. This movie ended up being the most expensive movie ever shot. Most expensive musical ever shot.
At the time.
At the time. Not
but reportedly reportedly he was never technically given a budget. Was supposedly, that's the rumor. So that's why this movie looks like this.
Yeah. Was it also his first time doing this like big scale fantasy like musical?
It's definitely his only musical. Yeah. Gotcha. A lot of his stuff is like courtroom drama. So
yeah, it's pretty different from 12 Angry Men. I've not really actually watched it, but it seems like a different vibe.
I don't think subway columns just started moving and chasing jurors down 12 Angry Men.
Yeah. Screenplay is by Joel Schumacher,
come on, Camp Queen.
We have discussed on this podcast as the director of The Phantom of the Opera. Famously very gay. That's all I really need to say.
The gay Batman and Robin
movie. The gay Batman and Robin movie. Yeah. And it was produced by Rob Cohen. I also want to say Sidney Lumet and Joel Schumacher are white. Just so we can. Okay. It stars Diana Ross as Dorothy, Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow, Nipsey Russell as the Tin Man, Ted Ross as the Lion, reprising his role from Broadway, Lena Horne as Glinda, Richard Pryor is the Wiz. Cinematography is by Oswald Morris. Dee Dee Allen did the editing. Charlie Smalls did the music, but then there are other songs which have specific different like Quincy Jones worked on this movie. Father of Rashida Jones. Famous for being Quincy Jones.
Famous for giving birth to Rashida Jones.
Quincy Jones gave birth to Rashida Jones. You're absolutely right.
He absolutely did. From him.
We are pregnant. I love when men say we're pregnant.
Yes.
We are pregnant.
He did the work.
The production company is Motown Productions, and it was distributed by Universal Pictures. It was released on October 24th, 1978. Its running time is a very long 133 minutes. This is Wikipedia. It says its budget was $24 million and its box office was $21 million. I don't know how much I believe that, but box office, I believe. The budget, I don't know if I believe.
I saw 23, I think, in my research, so I don't know if it's way off.
I saw 30.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So technically a flop?
Technically, yes. critically and commercially a flop. Definitely critically a flop.
Huh, interesting.
Very much.
Yeah.
So.
I guess I just always have thought, like, thinking back, it was like a revered, maybe not revered, but it was like, well, maybe revered.
So this movie is interesting because it is now considered like a cult film. You have like the people who love Michael Jackson. This is his first film role, so that's like a huge thing about this movie. This is one of Diana Ross's like last times as the star of a film. And black television stations like BET play this every year on Thanksgiving because this movie starts with a Thanksgiving sequence. So for a lot of Black Americans, this is like a cultural touchstone of their like Thanksgiving experience is watching this film. And it is none more so characterized by reading anything online where people will be like, I watched the subway sequence as a 6-year-old and I never have been able to be in a subway station alone in New York because of it.
Gosh,
which is great.
So freaky. I read a whole article about the critical reception of The Wiz at the time. Do we want to talk about that now or do we want to save it for later?
We can save it for later. But I'm glad you read that because I just got like general, the like normal critic stuff, but it felt very pointed. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So the only things I wanted to refer, like just background, Motown Records wanted to cast Stephanie Mills, but Diana Ross lobbied for the role. And she basically was like, if you give me Dorothy, I will get you Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow. So that was how
that's hard. That's hard to go against.
Yeah. And so that's basically how she just really fought for it. And the original director, whose name is John Badham, he stepped down after they had like secured Diana Ross for the role because he like didn't agree with it. Because in the original L. Frank Baum book, Dorothy is like 6 or like 8 or something like that. Like she's a young girl. And then in the 39 MGM version, she's 12, played by a 16-year-old. And in this version, in The Wiz on Broadway, I think she's 16. And Stephanie Mills was, I think, 19 when she played her, like when the show opened. And also Stephanie Mills, like, do you want to say about Stephanie Mills? Stephanie Mills is 4'9". So, like, yeah. So she, like, looks like a child.
A 16.
Yeah.
It's crazy. There is a video, I'll play the audio from it, and it's just her doing Home in like one of the original productions. Like there's somehow a bootleg copy of the, which is crazy. Yeah. It's 1975.
Someone had a full camcorder.
Huge.
But you can tell this girl is so small. Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, it's a full, like, crank a wheel.
Missing our visual bits of RJ and I miming a giant camera to bootleg a scene from The Wiz in the 70s.
So Eartha Kitt, they had originally wanted possibly for Evelyn, and then Jimmy Walker, who he's known for being on Good Times, which ran from 74 to 79.
I feel like it would have been a really different interpretation of Evelyn, but could have been really fun at the same time. I would have been interested in that version.
And as an aside, Sidney Lumet is the son-in-law at this point in time. He is the son-in-law of Lena Horne. So when you know people, you get them in the film.
When you know people, aka Lena.
Also Lena Horne.
Also Lena Horne, which is just.
This is her last movie, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's wild to be like, this is someone that defined like a full generation of Hollywood.
Well, and also was like really one of the only women who was like allowed to be a Black star.
Yeah.
I mean, because she was like very, I would say probably because of like her skin complexion is very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a legend, a literal legend.
A literal legend.
Just doing a lot in this film. And then my favorite fun fact I found about this movie. The flooring company that developed the Yellow Brick Road for the film which is not a brick. It's not a brick road. They specifically did not design a brick road. Marketed a similar home use version when the movie came out, which I think is incredible. Imagine being like, I want my kitchen to be the yellow stone.
I want to ease on down the stove.
Yeah.
Ease on down the fridge.
Yeah.
Ease on down the cupboards.
All of it.
Oh, wow.
Which, like, I love crazy sponsorship stuff like that. So I'm glad that back in the day, they're really holding up. So people need to be doing this again, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I agree.
I miss gags.
Yes, I agree. I like stupid stuff like this. Okay, we have to talk about this movie. Dinah Ross should not be in this movie.
Oh,
That's how I want to start this conversation.
We can't start there.
I think starting with Dorothy makes sense. Yeah.
Dinah Ross is a 33-year-old woman playing 24 and does not look anywhere near 24, nor does 24 work as an age for Dorothy, because the character is so young, innocent, and naive that her interacting with everyone, like, it reads so poorly. And especially, like, maybe if you cast someone who looks like they were 24, I would buy it. But, like, it's also it's the Ben Platt thing where it's like, I already don't believe it, and now you're forcing me.
You're working
really
harder to make us not believe it more.
Yeah.
There was a sense of, like, mismatched energies of, like, she's, like, trying to overshoot by performing way younger than 24, that it comes out really weird. Like, I don't know what you're doing this entire time.
Okay, let me make a counter case. One is that I would say they really clearly make the beginning of the movie about, like, her being someone of sort of like a delayed adolescence almost, of like she's an adult, but she, like, lives with her aunt and uncle, and she, like, doesn't really, they say something about never going below 54th Street or something. I've been to New York, but, like, I've never spent time there. I don't know what a good street number is. So, like, she very clearly is being told by her aunt, like, you got to get out there and you got to, like, take more chances in life, right? So I feel like they did construct, like, an alternative version of Dorothy where it's about like discovering adventure because you're like a closed off adult. I was going to say closeted. That wasn't the word I wanted. A closed off adult. So I guess that for that reason, it kind of works. Also because the setting of this movie is so bizarre that I can't, again, like, I don't associate anyone with the real world or, like, actual human ages or anything, because they literally are in a black void and it freaks me out so much.
So I didn't even want to get into this now, but since we're here,
you brought it up. You started.
Well, I was gonna work my way back around by the end. Okay, so this is why this interpretation of Dorothy doesn't work, is because Dorothy is a character who longs to be outside of her world. Like, she is a character somewhere over not that I'm not going to compare this movie to the Judy Garland version, but every iteration of Dorothy, even the original Broadway version, she lives in Kansas and wants to be somewhere else. The reason she sings home is because she's learned the value of being home by having had these, like, outside experiences. If you flip it and you make it she loves home but is afraid to go out into the real world, then why is she learning what home is? She already knows that home is safe and home is great. It doesn't make sense, and it really bothers me about this movie.
So, okay, I mean, yeah, I do think that the more original plot of it's about her longing for adventure and then coming to appreciate home is, like, maybe stronger. But I guess I can make the argument that
possibly
Dorothy is not anything, right? Like Dorothy is not a fixed character that's not allowed to have a different interpretation. So, like, I don't think we should say like, well, in the book or in the MGM version or in the whatever, like it is this story, so that has to be Dorothy's story. And I feel like what they were saying with this was it's just a flipped character of she appreciates home so much and she has to learn how to appreciate adventure by going through a nightmare landscape. But like but it does make the point of the final song, I will agree, like muddied, but I feel like the plot is so thin to this that I kind of don't care about the arc.
Yeah, it definitely felt like there was more work for us to do to try and connect the dots. I mean, like, yeah, like, because when I was watching, I was trying to make, okay, then the moral for her is that, like, she can go outside. She knows that home will always be kind of like where she creates it, where the thing she loves about home will always be with her wherever she goes, so she can create home anywhere. So I guess, like, that was like, okay, this is a twist to getting into that kind of, like, journey or that, like, lesson. So I did kind of buy that. Oh, this watch through did make me kind of think about, like, if Dorothy was a Dorothy today, it would be like, girl, you're just a millennial. Like, you don't want to get out of the house. You don't want to work outside. You want to live with your parents. That's like, yeah, that's like every anxious millennial. Like,
well, if it were today and she was like, I don't want to leave my house, everyone would be like, that's a safe public health
decision. That's probably what you should do. It did kind of feel like when she was like, I don't want to leave, and then ended up going to Oz. It was fully like exposure therapy of like, I would be so scarred for life if I was already afraid of leaving like my block.
The idea that my conclusion for this would be like, do you know what? It will be okay if I leave my house. Oh my God. The places she has gone to, the nightmares she has encountered. And she's like, do you know what though? The world is like a great place.
That's not
not this one, sweetheart.
Not this one.
But I will also say that what works for me in flipping Dorothy this way is that then they cut the element of Wizard of Oz where it's that all of the characters are like people that she encounters on the farm and like are in her real life. So like that's like not an element of this at all. So I'm glad that they didn't, while I like that part of the original, I'm glad that they didn't try to I'm glad that they like fully flipped it. I didn't feel like there were that many leftover elements that were confusing. It was mostly that like the ending of the story does have to rely on her going back home, and so like what their point was about that was a little bit muddied. Then that was the one thing that I think still didn't quite work.
I want to just make a note that the characters being people she knew in her life, that isn't only a 1939 MGM movie thing. That is not from the original book, and it is also not in the original stage production of The Wiz. I just think that it's either you keep this interpretation of Dorothy and you like are like, okay, she's scared and needs to. It's also just that I don't buy that Diana Ross is an innocent, naive person. I genuinely do not buy this interpretation from her. I don't buy what she's selling. I think she sounds great in all her songs, and my issue is not really with her like as musical performer. My issue is like she does a lot of screaming in this movie. Like a lot of screaming.
Good reason.
Good reason.
Molly was fully relating to her.
Molly was also screaming. She couldn't hear Diana's screaming on her.
I would have been this character, but 10 times as much screaming if this was happening to me. It frustrates me because I really think I think Home is really one of the top 5 11 o'clock numbers of all time. I just think it is a powerhouse number, and it is so important and has like such a beautiful message on top of just being like a great song. And it's frustrating that this movie, by making the choices it makes, cuts it off at the knees and like makes it a weaker song, also films it in a way where it's like, what are we doing? It's like just Diana Ross's face.
The head and then the like gray characters going past her. Yeah, and like in the original stage production, and I don't mean to keep harping on this, but Toto does not come with her. Toto is not a companion on her trip to Oz. So in every production of The Wiz, she like realizes she's home because Toto runs back onto the stage and she picks him up.
I will say Toto was probably my favorite performance of this entire movie.
Toto's very lived in. He's dropped in. He's performing dog.
He like knew the set like the back of his paw. He has just made himself comfortable.
I was so stressed out about Toto for so much of this movie. Could you imagine being dropped into this like black void and then having your tiny dog and being like, I'll just let him wander off and just like see what happens? I would be clutching that dog.
That's the thing. There was like a lack of Dorothy like making sure Toto is here. Toto was fully like exploring the world.
Frequently just off doing whatever. She would be like halfway down the road with all of her friends, and then Toto would just like start trotting after. And I was like, you didn't check before you started down your journey again on this road that your dog is with you? He is so small and so fragile.
So tiny.
And how is she not more concerned?
I want the Wiz, but from Toto's perspective. That's what I want.
It's just him tumbling into a void, I assume, because it seems like as soon as you get out of the perimeter of whatever close building we're in, it's circling in the void. Maybe it's great. Maybe the void is actually awesome and Toto's having a great time and my fears are unfounded. I don't know.
Toto's probably hopping from void to void, actually. Like he's been bouncing back and forth. He's
Void
like, I already saw the
He's doing a line of coke in Void 54. Yeah, right on the dance floor. It's great. I wanna play a little bit of Soon As I Get Home, which is like her, what do we want to call this song?
I wouldn't even say wanting song, but it's like it's like her first song.
Let's just say that. Her first song.
Maybe I'm just going crazy. Letting myself get uptight. I'm acting just like a baby, but I'm gonna be all right. Soon as I get home. Soon as I get home. Soon as I get home.
I think like when we were watching this, Adam and I were reminded that like Diana Ross is not like, she doesn't have like the big powerful voice. Her voice is like soulful. Her voice is like very like clean, very R&B, very radio friendly, and like has like her entire career is set up for that. So that's why like I feel like this was it was really good because it really fit her voice. But like it does go back into like if you listen to this and listen to like the Stephanie Mills versions of her singing the songs in the show, it is like Stephanie Mills is a belter. Diana Ross is like a singer, but it's definitely more like. She was definitely like records, radios, like that was her gig.
Now, the other thing I want to talk about, I have two big things that I really think are important about this movie. I think I talked about my bad one. I think the best part about this movie is the change of making it New York. And then like, I understand that it is nightmare fuel. I do understand that. But I also think it is the best version of when a college director is like, so we're going to do Taming of the Shrew, but we're going to set it on a playground. And it's going to be little kids bartering for who's the leader of the playground. Like that energy is what this movie gives me, but in the best way.
Yeah.
And I think every choice that they made, everything they flipped it to, every location they go to, it is so, Sidney Lumet like is a New Yorker. So like, it feels like he knows the world so well that he can parody it in this way. And I am obsessed with every stylistic choice that this movie makes.
I think that
Therefore,
it was very like I said, it was very creative. They had a very holistic view of like, what is this version of Oz going to look like? I think that they applied the architecture of a city in like really interesting ways. Here are my list of issues with it. So I think that the thing about it specifically being in a city that is such nightmare fuel for me is that it is an abandoned city. Because there's almost never any other characters on stage except for Dorothy and her companions. On screen. And so we have this visual of a city that is like intact, and it's not like sometimes if you watch like a post-apocalyptic thing, it'll be like, oh, it's like abandoned, but there's like trees and vines and stuff where it's like being overtaken by nature. And so that's like I feel like that's like a version of a city that I have, but a like fully intact but just desolate empty city is like,
it's a theme park.
So creepy to me. It's so creepy. It's like nuclear winter, like what could have happened. And then in a lot of the places, especially like as she first starts out, it's like actual apocalyptic, like crumbling. It's just like a side of a building and stuff like that again is just like empty wasteland. I've said this a million times, but beyond the buildings, it's just a black void. And I just like cannot handle. I hate deep sea. I hate space. I hate anything that is like, my hair is so big
tactile.
Right now. I just hate things that are like, it's just dark nothingness, and just anything could emerge from it at any time, and you have no way of anticipating that. So I can only handle the scenes that happen in the daytime. There are like a few scenes where they're actually shot outside clearly, and they had to make it day. And also the lighting in this film is like, it's like this very harsh, like blue, cold lighting that I super associate with like gritty realist films from like I guess the late 70s. I think of it more as like the 80s. And it's like no one's face is ever like fully illuminated. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very harsh, and it's never like we're fully seeing what's happening. And so it's just such nightmare fuel of like you can't quite make out anybody's features and everything. And then the dolls in the train station that he just like pumps up and they just get bigger, and
It's so scary.
It is. I feel like I'm learning so much about Molly today.
This has turned into therapy.
It's a real exploration.
And they do like these like wind sound effects and like tense chords every time they go somewhere to be like.
There's a lot of silence in this movie too.
Yes.
There's not just like score happening in the background. Like anytime there's dialogue, there's just like dialogue, and it sounds like they're in a void. Like it sounds like they're at the bottom of a well. Like it's very strange.
It's very
I'm obsessed with it.
I it's definitely like that first scene where they are in like the graffiti with Miss One. And then like all of a sudden they disappear, and then she turns around and she's like,
and they're gone.
In like the opening scene of West Side Story, which just like buildings just like demolished and like rubble. And then it kind of like, and then she's like singing "As Soon as I Get Home" all by herself. And it's like, okay, then did she just imagine all of those people? There was the one guy, the little street peddler that just like ran in and out. Like
what is the deal with the street peddler? Why is he there?
And he's just never explained. Never like
he's never like he doesn't come back and like work for the witch or like something that explains.
Honestly, the scariest part of this movie, and there are many contenders. There is a long list of contenders for scariest part of this movie. It is when after Evelyn dies and they unzip their bodies and emerge like the butterflies out of a cocoon. It is great, and it's such a long extended sequence of watching multiple people do it.
Molt out of their flesh.
Oh. I'm obsessed.
I
literally think every creative decision is like peak drug. I mean, peak drugs.
It's
peak drugs.
It's like Pan's Labyrinth. I never saw Pan's Labyrinth. but it gives me that.
It gives me Pan's Labyrinth.
It gives like David. You're in a world where David Bowie plays a magical entity.
Oh, Labyrinth. Yeah.
Oh,
Labyrinth is a
Labyrinth.
record. Yeah. This actually, I would say, is very similar to Labyrinth. That's a good. I also was going to say Neverending Story because that also has the thing about like the nothingness or something. Like that's like the villain of the Neverending Story is that like just it's being overtaken by a black void. So maybe that's why it so freaks me out and the Ajax the horse that goes into the quicksand.
No, I will say before you go on, I do want to say I am a person. RJ and I both worked at theme parks.
That's true. So we do love immersive storytelling.
We are also people who have been in places that are supposed to look like hustling, bustling places filled with people when there are no people.
Yes, like people have just left.
And I'm so used to that experience that it is not weird for me anymore. But I do understand why it is weird. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, I don't know that it's super, like, I've obviously worked in theater, so I guess I've had something close to that experience of like getting ready for a thing where a bunch of people are coming to see it. But
it's the closest I can say for theater. It's like when if you were the first, as you've been a stage manager, it's like you're the first person to the space and there's just the ghost light on stage. It's a little eerie.
I have control over the space in that circumstance.
Yeah.
I just feel like when she very first lands in Munchkinland and the kids come out of the mural.
Out of the mural.
Horror.
Supposed to be scary, right? I mean, I think that is supposed to be like...
Also, like, fully
really
dark, too.
Fully dark. There's figures emerging out of outlines. It's so creepy. And I think it's supposed to creep you out and be like, here's this frightening introduction. And then I think what's supposed to happen is throughout that scene, that frighteningness comes down as she like gets to know them and sees that they're not threatening and whatever. And just for me, it was like it just stayed there. It's just like never.
The choreography is.
There's nothing in that song that made me feel reassured that we were okay and this was a safe place to be. I just couldn't. I couldn't move past that feeling. So that was where I was at throughout the movie.
I
was at that level for the next.
When our school did it, we also made the choice that the Munchkins were like kids, which is kind of what the idea is here, that they're like juveniles. And I do like, I think that's fun. I think making them graffiti is cool. You just won't hear any arguments that it's.
I mean, I will say I was making a lot of like connections of like, okay, clearly they are taking, like urban New York things and like putting the twist in them. So like the idea that like they are in, like graffiti of like they start out as like I don't know, like didn't it say like Evelyn made them Evermean made them like graffiti basically.
They were drawing graffiti and she was mad about it, so she made them part of the mural.
Yeah, so
only when she died were they able to be free.
I think I missed a lot of the lines in this, to be honest.
That entire first paragraph of like explaining what just happened as soon as she landed happened so fast that I had to kind of.
I will say I think the screenplay is bad. I don't think Joel Schumacher did a good job, but that's for me to deal with.
There was just like that feeling of like, okay, like there is something that I do appreciate of like, okay, graffiti is like seen as something that's like, this is like defacing public property or whatever, blah, 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 but it contains such like vibrant cultural like expressionness, you know, and that's kind of like, you know, they start dancing, they start doing like this like super like celebratory thing that I was like, okay, I really started getting into that of like, okay, this is the juice of what we're going to get in this movie of like, it's going to show us visuals, like really interesting visuals of just like things about like Black culture and like, especially like urban culture in New York of like putting the twist in it and showing us like the sides of it as it would be in like a fantastical like situation.
Yeah. Conceptually, I love everything about it. Execution-wise, I hate it.
Execution-wise, it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Which again, then why does she have this experience and is like, I have learned how to love the out of doors. I would be like, I'm living in my closet for the rest of my life.
I would be like, the world is so much more threatening than I could have ever imagined. But here's the one thing I appreciated about the fantasy realm of Oz in this movie was that we were in a different world, having just revisited Dear Evan Hansen as we released it.
Yes.
I appreciated that there was something that heightened the reality and took us into a different space. I didn't want to be in that particular space, but I appreciated being in a different space.
It is very funny too, having watched this movie directly after talking about West Side Story. Also a movie that is like very set in New York and like specifically about New York things, and so I do think this is very funny. We did not mean to follow that up with this. I mean, that was not the through line we were trying to do, but I think it's funny.
Yeah.
I would like to play a little bit of He's the Wizard, as it's the first kazoo break that we've ever had on Showgays, the movie musical podcast.
Sweet thing, let me tell you about the world and the way things are done. Now you better watch it, 'cause the
An underappreciated instrument, honestly.
It's important for everybody to play along.
Yeah. I'm ready to talk Scarecrow. I mean, it's the next number.
Sure.
He does a great job. No.
My compliments to the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup wrapper that sits on his nose.
So long to realize that, and I did love it when I realized that's what was happening. Since we're talking about Scarecrow, how are we going to address the existence of Michael Jackson and his life?
I think
the same way we're gonna discuss Alfred Baum's life and problematic nature.
The same way we addressed the man who played Tony in West Side Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is crazy. We keep hitting these cancellations on our movies.
Me.
I think it's hard to find one with Adam being a co-host. It's terrible. I mean, I think it's hard to find something that has nobody in it that's a problem, but Michael Jackson, by all accounts, is like a real predator. Like, not diminishing what those other people did, but like hurt children. So it's like it's the worst of the worst things you can do, and so I just want to state up front that this is a good performance, and I'm uncomfortable with that fact. So
and it also is like he's so young at this point. Like this is pre-threat. This is him meeting Quincy Jones on this film, and this is like before Thriller, that album. Like basically the rest of his career is after this movie, which is how chronologically that is how careers work. They happen after things happen. So interesting that's how I decided to phrase it. But yeah, I do think he is not my favorite of the three friends. Mm-hmm. I would say the lion is. I laughed at every single line the lion had in this film.
Which is, I mean, a lot like the original when we watched the MGM movie too. Like I think our most memorable moments between the
Cowardly Lion is always a good time.
But yeah, it is always with Michael Jackson, because even like the bigger discourse of like the legacy versus, the act. But I do think like the distinction here would be like, this is Michael Jackson at a very young kind of like king of pop trajectory. So, I also know that.
I don't think it matters that like this happened before he did bad things. Like that doesn't impact my reading of it, just to be clear. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say though that like this song was not in the original stage production, right? Like this is a song that was made for the movie.
So kind of. So this song was originally written for the show, but it was written to be a song that the Winkies, who are the people that Evelyn is the ruler of, they sing it to Dorothy before she kills Evelyn, as in like, you're not gonna win this fight, don't even try it.
Okay.
But it was cut before the show went to Broadway.
Because I think, then what was his original song?
His original song is called I Was Born on the Day Before Yesterday, and we will listen to a little bit of it right now.
Is it your rendition when
No.
you performed?
It's not.
It was
that is lost to time, ladies and germs.
It's not from the Clay High School production.
Nope, sure isn't. Did I look up?
Cast recording.
Did I look up on YouTube to see if there was one, just in case, so I could ask for it to
It's going to be removed.
It is not on the internet. Thank God.
I was born on the day before yesterday. I had holes in my shoes and I was crying the blues, and I didn't have no place to stay. But I know I'm gonna make it this time. This time we're gonna make it. 'Cause I know I'm gonna make it this time. This time we're gonna make it. I was born over on the hill, not far away.
What's the general gig of his original song? Because I will say it felt like a weird shift of his song was very much not that wasn't a defining song of the Tin Man. It's me explaining my situation, or the Lions, I'm explaining the situation. His felt very I'm singing what I've been told. I don't know. I just didn't get the same expositionary this is me explaining
If I only had a brain.
Well,
yeah,
but I mean, it does in a way, because what it tells us as the audience is that he is ignorant, not unintelligent, that he is surrounded by a system that is telling him not to pursue knowledge, and that is the reason that he still has, but the reason that he's come to believe himself to not have a brain as a metaphor for not being smart is because he's surrounded by people telling him not to get knowledge. And
by people we do mean crows, by the way.
Crows, and yeah, that's what I was going into. I don't know, and it's really interesting to me that this wasn't in this context, at least in the Broadway version, because the crows make me think of the crows in Dumbo, which makes me think of Jim Crow, which makes me wonder what this Black movie is doing with that imagery. And I couldn't quite figure out, and this just might be my own lack of cultural knowledge, that I couldn't quite tell what they were trying to say with that.
I was kind of making the connection that there is that idea of
okay, hold on. Before we get into this, I want to clarify, we all are very aware that we are non-Black people who are now about to start commenting on what we think Black culture is.
Or
but we are aware of it.
Yes. I was just making the
anything we want because we're aware of it.
Yeah.
So none of we say it's
so free game, here we go.
I was making the connection that he is filled with all of this knowledge, quotes, and anecdotes of things, but just doesn't have the connection to actually make sense of them or apply them in his life, but is being told that it's all just garbage. I was kind of making that connection of always being told that you are not actually capable or able to do certain things because it's you have the potential to be able to do it, but nothing is built to actually help you support all of the things that you could be doing. That's that kind of take.
What confused me is that it felt like the moral of the movie is don't believe that message that the system is broken and that education won't get. It felt like the point was actually, no, you should get an education. You should try to join the system because don't believe those crows around you who are telling you can't win. You can win by through education. So it felt like, I'm nervous to even say anything. It felt like the crows were members of the Black community making fun of him. It's like the stereotypical thing of Black people calling other Black people white if they care too much about school.
Yeah.
What I read it more as is a commentary on some Black elders who have resigned their own personal life to be like, this is where I fit in and this is all it will ever be, and to tell like younger Black people that this is the only way it can ever be, so stop trying to like cause waves because it's not going to go well for all of us if you do that. That is the impression that like it gives me more than anything.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I just felt like the energy was very like playground. So I was reading the crows as like the same age as the Scarecrow character. But I see your interpretation, Adam, and I feel like getting like previewing a little bit of the stuff that I read about the critical reception and stuff, that the movie was praised in the Black press, which the author of this article I read said is like was sort of like hungry for representation of Blackness that was outside of the Blaxploitation sort of like history that we're just recently emerging out of here in 1978, where Blaxploitation was like great because it presented movies with all Black characters and sort of like showed that there was an audience for Black films, but it also had a lot of like hypersexuality and violence and depictions of drug use and things that a lot of people in the Black community felt like were not the best representations of the community. And so there were a lot of people in the press of like newspapers that served a Black audience that were like looking for this more sort of like positive representation, but it feels like it gets very into like respectability politics and the idea of like go like yes, like go 100% into the system, be well educated, be polite, be respectful, like those sorts of things, which I think we all know is a pretty complicated and not necessarily the thing that we want to be telling people is like be more respectable and you'll be treated nicer, basically. You'll face less oppression if you're a more respectable person is obviously a false promise. So I just was curious. I just would love to hear some thoughts from people. Maybe we have some listeners who can weigh in about this of like, how do we feel about that scene 2022 lens of how it's presenting? Like, it feels like the song is asking this question of like, should you trust the system or not? And it feels like the musical saying, yes, you should trust the system. Do we feel like that still applies? Or ever applies.
And that's the thing, like, especially at that time, like in the like 70s, 80s of like, that was kind of like the survival tactic of a lot of like marginalized people of just like, yes, just get through it, just play the system to not make waves, because like if you make waves, then you're a Black Panther. If you make waves, then you're like a rioter, you know, like and so like I think, that definitely is very interesting.
Let's listen to a little bit of You Can't Win.
You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game.
You can't win.
I really do like this song just from a song. No context, just like singing a song. I would put it in my book.
I thought it was interesting that it felt like the most political song to me. And it was at not the very, very beginning, but it was like the very first introduction to one of the companions. And is there a word that's like established for the three guys that Dorothy goes on a trip with?
No.
I just called it like companions and friends. And okay, I didn't know if there was like a canon, like
a Scoobies,
the quad or whatever. Yeah.
The trio.
It felt like, I mean, obviously the whole movie is very infused with Black culture, but like it felt like this song to me, at least as a white person watching in 2022, had the clearest political questioning going on, and it didn't feel like anything else quite had the same level of like how should the Black community advance? Let's deal with that first, and then we can get on to the rest of the Wiz. Felt a little bit like what the song
Yeah, it was the least like celebratory out of all of the songs, because I think a lot of the songs still had like an infusion of like celebrating Black culture in a sense, whether if it's the music or like just like the attitudes or whatever. But yeah, this was very much like the most, which I think honestly like makes sense now if this song was originally like right before the climactic Act 2 moment. So it's like everything's already established by the time that this song should be sang, so it can be more forward or more pointed.
I do want to say that the original song "Born on the Day Before Yesterday" is like a classic, just introduction song of like, I am the Scarecrow. I was born on the day before yesterday. This is what my costume is made of. Da 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 da. Like, that's kind of just generally what his song is about. But the line "I was born on the day before yesterday" is the first line that the Scarecrow says in the original Wonderful Wizard of Oz book. So they like drew that line specifically for the song.
Gotcha.
Which is cool.
Is him being filled with like quotes and stuff that
is in The Wiz.
Okay. I really like that.
It's great. It was my favorite part.
Yeah.
It's like a very nuanced like way into like that character, the Scarecrow character. I was like that I like that a lot.
Yeah. And it is like a really great explanation of like someone who is intelligent but not clever.
Mm-hmm.
And like he has enough brains obviously to be able to read these quotes. But he just chooses them seemingly at random for like the situation. And I just think
he's not seeing like the actual cleverness or the connection.
I didn't feel like he was choosing them at random at all. I felt like in this version, it felt like he was like selecting it specifically for the moment.
Well, I mean, like that too, but even also like him not realizing that like that itself is inherently smart, which like kind of leads to Dorothy at the end of like, you've been smart you had brains all along.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about the other two. We should talk about the other two. So Tin Man is weird because Tin Man gets 2 songs in one scene. In the original Wiz, he has both songs, but in the first scene, you only get "Slide Some Oil to Me." You don't get "What Would I Do If I Could Feel" until his meeting with the wizard. Yes.
And not an abandoned amusement park in the original.
Not Coney Island. Not Coney Island. In the original show, he is a Tin Woodsman in the Wiz.
Oh.
In this one, he's an animatronic, which as someone again who works in a theme park, you gotta love representation.
I really love the specificity, but I do agree that there is nothing eerier and creepier than an abandoned amusement park.
True.
Like, there's a reason why so much horror is written in that setting.
But see, this scene, I think it was filmed in an actual theme park during the day, and so it was light outside. Mm-hmm. So this was one of the scenes that didn't freak me out.
It's like as soon as
when the faces in the wood like look and open their eyes, and the Scarecrow's like,
that was a bad moment, but for the most part, this scene helped me relax a little bit more because I was like, okay. And I guess with theme parks too, it's like I get that theme parks close. Like there's a time that's off hours and there aren't people there. But when they meet the lion in the next scene and they're like in front of the library in this like huge city street, it's just like no one else is there.
No one is here.
I really like the Tin Man. I really like his songs.
I like the addition of like the Carney kind of like
step right up.
Yeah.
I didn't love all the jokes about how fat his wife was because the like whole setup is that he's been stuck underneath.
What was her name?
Statue, basically.
Teeny.
Yeah. Who's a very large woman, and they made a lot of jokes about that, and it felt over the top. I feel like RJ made this joke earlier that I was going to be like, there's too much music in this, and I did start to feel like there was too much music in it in the Tin Man scene. There's just like little book to go with so much music.
Scores.
Yeah, totally.
And there are still multiple songs that they cut too.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that this has again a similar thing with the Scarecrow, where he kind of "Slide Some Oil to Me" is in the show, like his just like, I'm the Tin Man. I need oil. This is my song about needing oil. Whereas having him start with what would I do if I could feel already sets up like what he needs or what
his objective is. What's his
and then Lion doesn't really get that, but he does get Be a Lion, which is like Dorothy's song to him. Anyway, I just say all this to say I do think something interesting about The Wiz is that it deploys once again the image of like a black woman lifting up black men, but not getting the same reciprocation from the men to herself. Because she sings Believe in Yourself, and then they're just like, okay, I do. Bye. And then Lena Horne a black elder woman has to sing Believe in Yourself to Dorothy. So I do think that that's like an interesting, I don't know if that's purposeful at all. It's probably not. But I do think that's something to like point out and note as interesting.
Yeah, I would doubt that was like the intention, but I think it's a very interesting reading. I think that's cool.
Let's get to the fucking Emerald City, because I need to feel a little gay.
I mean, I'm not against being gay, but Adam did say that the lion is his favorite character, so I just want to check before we move to Emerald City. Was there more you wanted to say about the lion?
I just his song is fine. I think it's fun.
I really like her song. I really like Be a Lion.
Be a Lion is a really good song. I do just think his performance, because he got to do it on Broadway, it's so theatrical.
Yeah.
Whereas the other two are a little bit more like camera ready. But I think in such a fantastical setting where you're like encumbered by this massive costume where you're like wearing it around like 3/4 of your face, basically, I do think he manages to still like surpass that and still be like bigger than everything surrounding him. And I just think it's like a really good performance. And a lot of his like one-liners I think are really funny as well.
The visual of like just the visuals in general of just like, we are so far away from the action, like the scene where like Dorothy, when they first go to when they first ease on down the road, and they're like, the camera is so far away from them just to like get that view that it's massive, but like, which I think was like cool, but at the same time I was like, why am I getting this large scale?
This movie is allergic to mid shots. This movie loves either like a close-up where it's like just the head, or it loves being like you're in the back row of the theater, the place you always want to be when you're seeing a musical.
Because I felt like
the back.
Every time there were so many moments where I felt like I was so far away that I'm like, what am I? Where are they? But I also do want to call out the actual Yellow Brick Road. Being like fully paneled in seams.
You can see the seams on the floor. Yeah. It's clearly stickers.
Yeah.
I feel like too, not to complain more about how scary this movie is, but like the weird shots of like too close, too far, again, make me feel like it's a bad dream that I'm having.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like that's a very common feeling in dreams where you're like, I can't like interact with this person in a normal way, or like, you know, like get a good sense of the landscape.
And also multiple Empire State Buildings. So like just
Chrysler Building.
Oh, Chrysler. Just multiple Chrysler buildings. Just like
five Chrysler, famous New York 5 Chrysler Building city. I do like, there is like, I like in that sequence, I like that the flat is so clearly a flat. Like, I like that it's so fake that you can tell they're like going to ease on down the road, and at some point they're going to have to stop and be like, look back and be like, we've run out of room. We can't, there's a wall.
And so then Toto just fully sprinting like 3 miles.
running down the Yellow Brick Road.
Struggling to keep up with them with his tiny legs.
I really, really hate, and I think something that eludes and helps the unsettling feeling that this movie has, or exacerbates it, I should say, is that the camera is so static for like every song. Like, it'll just pick a point, and then it's just stuck at that point for like the full 2.5 minutes that the song is happening, which like isn't typically how At this time, it was a little bit more like this, but even still, like having these massive wide shots and then just like staying on a wide for like 2 minutes is so weird. Like you feel so removed. Sometimes when I was little, this is such a weird tangent. Sometimes when I was little, I would have this thing where I would like have a nightmare or whatever, and I'd go, my mom would be like downstairs in the living room still, but I wasn't supposed to be out of bed. So I would come down the stairs, but I would just be on the first step that was like past the wall. So she couldn't see me, but I would still felt like I was there. And then I would like peek around the corner, and then my eyes would do this thing where I would like tunnel vision focus. So I would be like I would be like looking at my mom, and then it would start to look like she was like the camera effect where like they zoom in, but they pull the camera back. So it like it's like there's like an optical illusion, and it would happen, and I would like be looking at my mom, and it would seem like she was like getting further away from me, and I would like start like crying, and she'd be like, "What are you doing?" Anyway, this movie feels like that sometimes, where it's like if I stare at it too long, it starts to feel like I'm like being pulled back or something. It's very weird.
I feel like it goes back to the thing you shared with us about the director, like not really having done movies like this, that I wonder if it was just like lack of sort of like, I don't really want to say understanding, but like
scale, like not like having a big enough picture of like what
just like uncertainty about how to capture something of this scale maybe was somewhat behind it, or they just wanted it to look like a nightmare. Mission accomplished. So
yeah, and I think it's also too, especially that Ease on Down the first Ease on Down the Road sequence with Diana and Michael, is the street is so big.
Yeah.
And the set they're heading toward is so big and they're so little. And I mean, in the movie's defense, the 1939 version does this too, where you stay on her and Dorothy and the Scarecrow, and they like walk away from the camera down the road, and it's a wide shot. Like it's not like I guess you're not as far as this version, but like you're pretty far away from them walking and go down. But I think because it's all so tight, like the brick road is really small, and they're like surrounded by like lush organic greenery, that it like doesn't feel as like threatening as like massive brutalist New York coming down upon you. Do we want to talk about either the subway or the Poppies, aka the sex workers of Oz?
I will say, you talking about like blaxploitation and like they're trying to cleanse themselves of that kind of like pop culture identity definitely played into like the Poppies and being sucked into that, like, look at how great this is, because like this is like a celebration of what we are, but at the same time, like, is this actually like what it should be? Which I think feeds again into that maybe like bigger purpose that the movie had of like what it's trying to say.
Yeah, I should clarify that I didn't mean to say that the creators of the movie were necessarily aiming for that. I just don't know. I don't have enough information to say like what their goal was in terms of like how they wanted to be putting out Black representation. What I meant was that the article I read was about like critical reception, and they were saying like Black critics who wrote for newspapers that focused on Black audiences tended to have that opinion. Like the term blaxploitation apparently was coined by, hold on, let me find it in my notes, Junius Griffin, who was then the president of the Beverly Hills Hollywood branch of the NAACP. And it was a combination of Black and exploitation for a genre that was, quote, proliferating offenses to the Black community in its
perpetuation.
I know that word, I just couldn't read it. In its perpetuation of stereotypical characters often involved in criminal activity. So there was certainly this arm of like the NAACP, some Black media that was like, we're not so sure about these blaxploitation films. And so that like part of the community was really happy about the representation in The Wiz, but also blaxploitation movies were like had huge audiences and were super appreciated by the Black community.
That's why they kept being made.
Yeah, it's like, it's just like not a monolithic question. And I don't know enough about the intentions of the people making the film to say like, because in some ways it like still fits into the blaxploitation heritage in that like there were lots of blaxploitation films that were like a retelling a black version of a white story, like Blackula, like, you know, black version of Dracula, pretty self-explanatory. So like it did follow like that part of blaxploitation. So it also wasn't like fully divorcing itself from that movement, but at the same time it was like sort of in contrast to it, at least in some people's readings of it. So
I was just gonna say, historically, this movie is seen as the end of the blaxploitation movement.
yeah, I saw that too, but it was on Wikipedia and I was too lazy to track down the source, so I didn't want to say for sure that was true.
I'll happily share Wikipedia information. That's all I do on this podcast.
Because I also read some stuff on about blaxploitation that said it was like 1970 to 1975, and this was 78. So I feel like it's like not totally clear to me like what the historical consensus is, but I feel like the Poppies, as you were saying, RJ, is like an interesting example of it because it's like is portraying the Poppies, who I think we're meant to understand as sex workers, and I think we're meant to understand the poppy powder or whatever as like drugs, right? It's like a thing that they like blow on them and stuff. So, and it's obviously portrayed negatively, but also like they look really cool and like kind of appealing and like kind of interesting. Like cool. So it's like good and bad.
But then like later on, like the Poppies are also potentially like not working for Evelyn, but they're also part of like the I don't know, citizenship of Oz. So they're also like a working part of when
we go to her sweatshop.
Yeah.
I saw that because they bring in the crows too, and I saw that as they were going to become slaves to the sweatshop. Like they were like rounded up, and they are like new workers in the sweatshop. That's what I saw.
Yeah, so like they could also be like, yeah, I don't know, like not like they could also be victimized by like Evelyn, but like, that they were like a part of like the, I don't know, economic ecosystem, whatever of Oz.
Yeah, support small business.
Yeah.
I felt like the whole Poppy thing, I mean, I guess it's like equally kind of strange and pointless in the 39 MGM version, but it was like Dorothy and who is the other? Is it Scarecrow?
Lion.
Dorothy and Scarecrow get knocked out by the Poppies.
The lion.
Oh.
Because they're the two only organic characters. Because Scarecrow and Tin Man aren't made of flesh.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So
I just remember
aren't made of flesh, you know.
Doesn't the lion has like a monologue about how he wishes that he were braver and stuff while Dorothy is knocked out, right?
In this version?
In this version.
Yes,
no, he comes to after he gets cried on, and then he
gets revived first. Okay, that's
he gets revived first.
Yeah, he gets revived
and then
first.
They go revive Dorothy.
Yeah. It's just like a very weird where it's like this whole thing to get them into the Poppies, and then they like they ascend on this window cleaning thing, and then go into this like hole at the top of a building that has like smoke coming out of it, and you're like, oh my gosh, like where are they going? Like what's in this hole? It's so like fascinating and like mysterious, and like where are they going? And then they come down a slide and they're just like on top of the building, and I was like, so that was it? Was just like,
I will say,
and that was our whole goal, and you're just on the roof now? What?
It was weird for like Miss One to be like, two things you gotta remember. One, ignore the pop. Like she made it very clear to be like, don't mess with the Poppies. And like,
well, because this is another change from the. So in the stage adaptation, Dorothy remembers her name is Ada Pearl in the stage version, but she remembers Ada Pearl's warning about the Poppies and like flees before they finally like get to her. So only in the end is the cowardly lion like affected, and then he is brought back to them. They don't even save him. He's brought to them by the mice, the field mice. They just are like, you left this.
You left the lion.
And then he's fine.
I'm going to be real. I didn't hear anything that Miss One said because I was so scared during that whole scene. So I didn't.
I was singing Can't Tell Racist in my head the entire time.
In your summary, when you were like, Miss One tells her not to take off her slippers, I was like, she does. Because by the time that we got to taking off her slippers, I was like, literally, why don't you just give these up? Like, has anything been said in this movie that tells you you can't just give up the slippers? Like, why do you care? And it's because I didn't listen to anything that was said in the opening scene.
Molly was fully doing a Sudoku just so she could avoid watching what was on TV.
Yeah. It's the thing. Molly was doing the thing I do when I watch a Drag Race and they're doing a comedy challenge and it's not going well and I have to look anywhere but the screen. Okay, are we done with Poppies as general concept?
Sure.
Can we move on
let's get to the gays.
Let's get to the gays.
Let's talk about the Emerald City, honey. Let's discuss.
This song is so good. This is a bop.
This is written for the movie.
This song is so good. It is a bop. And it's clever when it gets switched from green to red. Like, it works so good in green.
And then to gold.
That I was like, oh, like, this is so written well for green. And it's like, oh, it's like, it's saying something like money, power, blah, 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 blah. Then when you flip to red, and it's like, oh, that literally means nothing. Like, this is a song about, like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, it can just change on a whim and people can, like, make a fake rule. It's, I was living the entire time. And then when it went to gold, it was like a full disco solid gold moment, which I love disco so much that I was just living the entire time.
So for historical context, I don't know, but background context, the Emerald City, to separate ourselves from the 1939 version, obviously, the Emerald City in the 1939 version isn't made of emerald, whatever, blah, blah, blah. In the original book, when they go to the Emerald City, they're instructed that they have to wear these green glasses, which if you've ever seen Wicked, they wear these green glasses. It's a reference to the original book. When they find out everything at the end of the book about the wizard and how he like is a fraud, he tells them that when he got here from Omaha on his big hot air balloon, he was given the title of wizard and he had a great city built of glass, but he instructed them all that they had to wear green glasses so that they would start to just believe that it was made of emerald whenever they were in the city. So then the story spread that the Emerald City is made of emerald, even though it's just a regular city. That is all to say that I like that they still kept the intent of the Emerald City is not really what you think it is, because the wizard, I like their idea that the wizard just keeps changing the color of the moment to be like, I'll just keep you on your toes so that you can't really focus on the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. I just like that. I like that interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, I liked the overall visuals of the scene and stuff. I just didn't feel like the joke needed to go on that long. I got what they were doing pretty quickly, and then they were let's do a full additional sequence for red, and then we also need another change into gold. And I was like, I think the audience is smart enough that when you do the switch and they're immediately in different colors, we all understand, okay, this happens all the time and they switch clothes. Yeah. I get it. I don't need you to be and now, but it's the same, but it's gold. And it felt a little bit like when a child tells you a joke and they don't know when to stop, hit the punchline and be done with it. I felt that this sequence really dragged, really, honestly.
Yeah, but I do feel like you could tell they were this is the production. We are gonna spend some time and money here.
Yeah.
We rented out the Twin Towers for a full night, and crazy. We cannot.
Is it the World Trade Center? I had a feeling that it was, but I was like, I don't even know where that's coming from. That I'm just pretty sure that that's what these buildings are. Oh,
yep. It's so weird.
It's and it's weird, CGI, hover,
there's a
satellite
thing between the two.
Eye thing in between
towers.
the two.
I think this sequence works. I think it is a little slow, but I think this whole movie has that general problem of a little bit too slowly paced. I think that the biggest problem is that green is just walking around. Green has no dancing happening, and it's the longest in the sequence. And like gold goes wild. They like
Gold is like
pop
a full
off.
new number. Like
Yes.
it's just like
But red is also kind of slow. And I think if they were like 3 different fast songs, then it would be like, oh, this is like still upbeat and fun. So it wouldn't make it feel as like
the
lethargic.
length of how green was should have been the length of both green and red. And I could
Yeah, just
and
split
like-
that time.
yeah.
And red was supposed to be longer, but they like lost footage. And then the Port Authority wouldn't let them like fix it. So the end.
Wow.
Port Authority?
Who I guess I don't know if they still do, but at the time they like ran the cities like if you wanted to reserve, like if you wanted to shoot anything, you had to like
to film it. I thought you meant
Yeah.
like they found the footage and the Port Authority was like, you can't re-edit the movie.
yeah.
You lost it at the docks.
We're confiscating this extra footage from the Wiz.
You spent too much time. I will.
Molly was the Port Authority. She's like, it's already too
It's gone.
long.
It's gone. Sorry.
Yeah, if I were the Port Authority, I would have lost the footage for this movie.
Sorry, gotta do something else. I don't know. I will say the best part of the scene is the giant intercom microphone.
The microphone
Yes.
and the camera that walk around.
It's so funny. I
When
told
they
Adam,
say- Yeah.
I told Adam, if I ever did like a club kid look for RuPaul's Drag Race, I would be that giant microphone.
Yeah.
When they said, "Hey Mike," when they called over "Hey Mike," and then it was a
Yes.
giant walking microphone, I was like, "That's the first genuinely funny joke of this movie." I think.
I will say this scene somehow both because of like the incredible, I mean, I will say I love the costumes of all these people. There is no 2 background actors wearing the same costume. Every costume is original. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It is somehow the cheapest and most expensive looking scene I've ever seen. Because like you have like these like 280 chorus people just like walking around looking amazing. But then like a camera which looks like a 4th grader was like, oh, I was supposed to make a camera
A giant
costume.
camera.
Here we go. Give me the tubes. I love it. It's so good. Let's hear a little bit of which sequence should I play? Green, red, or gold?
It's gotta be
Gold.
green.
I'll split the difference and I'll go red.
Wouldn't we see green?
Ooh, 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 wouldn't be caught dead. And if I'm caught at all, then catch me in dead red.
So, I want to skip to Evelyn.
Yeah, because we know the story. He goes blah blah blah. You gotta blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You gotta do something for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that she runs a sweatshop. Because she is in the text, she is like, she's enslaved the Winkies, who are the people who live on the west side of Oz. And I like this, if you're updating everything to be kind of like a modern day equivalent, like I liked this, like
It's
setting
fast
it-
fashion.
Yeah, it's H&M.
It's
Yeah,
Yeah. It was funny because I had this memory of this scene from watching it when I was younger, but I couldn't really remember how it worked. And so for some reason, I thought that the wizard was the one running a sweatshop. That I was like, maybe did they like change the ending where it's like the wizard is evil or something? And I couldn't remember. And so when they went and met the wizard, I wrote in my notes like, doesn't the wizard wear a big dress and like run a sweatshop? But even as I wrote it, I was like, sweatshop? Is that right? And then it cut to the sign that's like, producers of sweat. It's like a joke that's like literally it's a shop for sweat, which I thought was so funny. And then I was kind of disappointed that like in the sweatshop they were sewing stuff, and I was like, oh, I wanted it to just be like people on treadmills or like something where it's like they're just like making sweat. Would have been a very funny thing to have.
I also wasn't sure, like, was Evelyn's, is this Oz's main export. You know what I mean? Like, who was benefiting from the sweatshop? Just Evelyn, the entire.
Well, I guess if we think about it, and they are producing clothes, the fashion demands of Oz say that you need to have new outfits.
Gotta be seen green.
Really quick. So
wouldn't be caught
maybe
dead in
really
red.
the wizard is causing the economic conditions in which Evelyn's sweatshop can thrive, and we should think about that.
Wow. It goes all the way to the top.
Don't trust big corporations.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, what to me was missing more so than the that being bothered by the way that Dorothy was flipped was the fact that it felt like Evelyn was like so thrown in at the end. And in the 39 MGM version of Wizard of Oz, the witch
she is a
this
constant
character throughout, right? And it's always building up to her. And in this, like, I don't even knew that. Well, again, I didn't listen to the first scene, but I don't even know that we knew that Evermean was her sister, like, until Dorothy is in the sweatshop with Evelyn. Like, it didn't feel like, yeah.
I think Miss One just said the general, like, there are 4 witches.
North, south, east, west.
North, south, east, west. One's done. I don't have powers anymore.
But there was no sense of, like, specifically make sure you avoid Evelyn because she's going to be mad about this or any, like, they're just like, she just like wasn't a presence throughout. And I thought the peddler was going to end up being like one of her henchmen, and it would turn out like, oh, this has all been connected, and your real villain the whole time has been Evelyn. But like, it's just, the peddler's just a creepy dude that just loves scaring people, I guess. I don't know.
You are fixed on this peddler.
He's so scary.
He blew up 2 dolls to chase them.
Oh, when they're like slowly coming down the thing and they're like stuck at the stairwell.
They're like walking up the stairs.
Yeah.
I feel like next episode I'm gonna like log into the remote video call to record this, and you two will like have found outfits of those dolls.
It's like the call starts and the room is empty, and we just walk from the end of the hallway. And that's the Wiz. Oh my god. No, but what a great not next week, but sometime in our friendship.
I'm gonna come to Chicago to visit you guys, and you'll open your front door and be wearing those. There's got to be somewhere on Amazon they've got to sell these costumes.
No, you'll see, like, why is there a subway pillar in the middle of your apartment? And all of a sudden it breaks.
Not when the subway pillars break, or the trash cans.
Why are the subway pillars so scary? They're so much scarier than the trees in the MGM version. Why are they so much scarier?
There's structural support, and so that you know the entire station's about to collapse.
Yeah, and that really was getting me.
Yeah. And that they're filled with
engineering. I was really spooked by engineering.
The running joke was that I could not remember what the song was called. And I just kept saying, like, I don't want to hear any more bad news. And I just kept saying versions of that phrase to Adam. If I had a nickel every time I heard some bad news today.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that.
Literally. I could not remember what it was, though, when she finally said...
It's the Kenan Thompson, ooh wee. What's up with that? What's up with that?
So when she finally said, don't nobody bring me no bad news, I was like, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's what it's called. I felt like my mom trying to remember, like, actors. Like, that was...
Yeah.
That was the vibe.
YouTube just recommended to me this skit from SNL from like 10 years ago where it's like the mom celebrity translator.
The mom translator, yes.
She's like, Kevin Ragu, and it corrects her as Keanu Reeves.
It's that. That was me with this song.
Yeah.
And then
It was good.
once
It was a good
she, yeah, great. Yeah, winning words from Molly. And then once she dies, aka is flushed down a massive toilet, which is great. I love that. Everybody sheds their skins and then sings a bop, an absolute bop, called Brand New Day.
The first time I ever heard the song was a Family Guy skit. They did the skit in Family Guy. I don't remember what context it was.
It's an episode where the entire police department has had to go to South America. And so the news reporter is like, how do you feel about there being no police in Quahog? And the guy's like, really? We're free. And then it's all white people who unzip, and they're all black people who then sing Brand New Day. They are nude. Let's say that. There's a lot of
Not nude. They're wearing loincloths.
They're wearing loincloths. There's a lot of ass cheeks. How about that? Can we agree on that? That there's a lot of ass in this song? It's a little wild. It's very 1978 in that way.
Sidetrack, right? Isn't this one of the songs that they play for Musical Mondays?
Maybe past We've Stayed in there.
Usually they play Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News. That's usually the one that they play.
Okay. I feel like the visuals of this scene felt like I had seen it at Sidetrack, but maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I can't believe you're here to tell me more bad news.
The famous song
Not
from
again
The
with
Wiz.
bad news. News? That's not good? Absolutely.
News that's not good. It may be more common than you think.
Not in front of myself.
Not in front of my
bad news.
Oh my God, so stupid.
Should we just finish it out?
Yeah, and then Lena Horton has a bunch of babies behind her.
The snow
What's
baby.
up with that?
The snow baby.
I love that this episode is fully evolved now of just us being like, what was with this visual?
Well, wait, I want to.
We've all seen Wizard of Oz. You know what happened.
I feel like it would be crazy to just.
She had the power all along. Okay, we all knew that.
I feel like it would be crazy to just blow by the Richard Pryor of it all. So Richard Pryor plays the Wiz.
When they first walk in and see the giant bust of the Wiz, my first thought was, if I was Dorothy, I would be like, that's Richard Pryor, because they literally built Richard Pryor's head like 10 feet tall. But I was like, okay, that's Richard Pryor, right? It's so crazy.
I really like the change of him being like a
politician?
A bad politician, like a shitty politician at his job from New Jersey. I think that joke is really funny. They got rid of every Wiz song. So in the show, he has, I think, 3 songs. He has...
Wow.
So You Wanted to See the Wizard, Y'all Got It, and then those 2 are cut. And then he sings Believe in Yourself, the one Dorothy sings to the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. He sings it in the show.
Gotcha. How long is the stage show?
It's like this, probably the same length of time. Like, it's a normal musical.
So did they add songs to this? It just felt like the movie was so long. I can't imagine that they cut songs from it.
Are the musical numbers not as long as it is in the movie as it is in the...
I think that just the movie is so long because there's just a lot of like extended sequences where you just watch something happen with no dialogue for a really long time.
Establishing shots and a train sequence that lasts hours in my head. Yeah.
I will say the beginning, like the prologue before she goes to Oz, is like kind of long in the movie too. Whereas in the show, it's just like Dorothy's like, I want to leave Kansas, and then Anna sings her song, and then there's a cyclone. Whereas in this one, it was like, well, we have to have Thanksgiving dinner. Take their coats, Dorothy. Take them to the bedroom.
The baby's here. We get to see the baby.
But I was comparing it to
bedroom.
I'm comparing it to the Wiz stage show, not Wizard of Oz.
That's what I was just describing.
But you said that in the other version, you were talking about the cyclone and stuff, which is
what happens in the Wiz. Yeah.
Weren't you talking about? Okay, I thought you said stuff about them being on a farm that made me think you were talking about Wizard of Oz. Never mind.
Because the Wiz is still on the farm.
The Wiz is still on the farm in the show, in the original show. The
What?
Wiz is set in Kansas. Yeah, the movie.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I did not make that clear. Hello, an hour and 58 minutes in. The Wiz stage show is basically exactly the book, except black. And the movie changed the entire setting to be Harlem in New York.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I think the Scarecrow is the one that doesn't work. And if you're going one thing to one thing, I think the lion being outside the building, and then I think those two work, but the Scarecrow, there's not like a Scarecrow of New York.
I guess that's why they had to have that like desolate landscape of crumbling buildings before we got to the city proper.
Yeah, we're on the outskirts, exurbs. Yeah, we're in Yonkers.
Yeah.
It starts the movie in upstate New York in Yonkers.
I will say when it was after the Evelyn getting back into the whole sequence of obviously like the flying monkeys, like Harley Davidson's like chasing them around or whatever. Like
also a very long sequence.
Yeah.
Very long.
Of like the chasing before defeating, but then also like after of like, let's celebrate like her. But like that whole sequence happened in a parking lot structure. Like
I
between
thought it was a stadium, maybe.
Yes, it was like the parking, it was like the swirls of the parking, but then also like, yeah, like the stadium seating. So like in my mind, I was like, okay, in between Emerald City and the sweatshop, which technically supposed to be underground, there was a stadium in between that I was like, I need like a video game version, like world map of just like, how does this actually plot out? But I think
that's what makes it like kind of, that's what makes it full fantasy, is that none of it feels like a dream because none of it is.
Yeah, it's like when you have a dream of like all of a sudden I was in my house, or like it was technically New York, but like it was like I treated it like it was my house.
Yeah, I was in my kitchen and then I walked into my living room, but my living room was my office, and then I went to the bathroom, which was like the bathroom at Sidetrack.
Yeah.
So it's just all things that don't make sense together. Yeah.
You know,
I just want one nerdy person out there with like cartography skills to like do their best in making a fun map. Because I would be very interested.
I feel like the whole flying monkey sequence was like they found this interesting structure to like film all of them like crisscrossing each other and at different levels and stuff. And it was like a little bit like freshman film class where it's like, I had this one really good idea for a sequence, so I'm going to like make the sequence so long because I really want you to see all the angles that I found in this building.
And fully, like, I just get a kick out of watching Diana Ross sprint
run in heels,
and being chased and screaming.
So anyway, I like his performance as the Wiz. I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's like in the top.
I will say it is very, just like Evelyn, like it does feel kind of like everything ends so cleanly that it's like, yeah, I was a fraud. Sorry. I don't know. Like there's
no, like, that's another thing that frustrates me about like how they this part changed, because like the brilliance of like him being like, well, just do the balloon and then we'll leave together and I'll take you back. And then like it ends up it goes awry and he leaves before she's supposed to. That works.
That's in the original stage version.
That's in the original. It's in the movie, or that's in the 39 version. It's in the stage version. But it's not in this version. So it just like he has his final line where he's like, "Yeah, sorry, I can't help you," and then
it's fully just like a red herring.
And then we get into Est teachings. Do we want to talk about Est and new age theology?
No,
I'm
you wrote this
totally
down,
confused. What are you talking
and
about?
I had no idea what this was in the notes.
So Joel Schumacher and Diana Ross, at the time, there was this thing called Werner Erhard's teachings. The classes themselves are called Erhard Seminar Trainings.
This sounds like a made-up thing that somebody put in a sketch for you to be like, Hergen
and his wine.
Fruit wine, yeah.
Joel
It also
Schumacher,
is giving me like major Scientology vibes too. So
well,
immediately.
So Joel Schumacher and Diana Ross were both super into what it was called Est. They were super into it at the time. And because Joel Schumacher wrote the script, this entire last sequence where none of the song Believe in Yourself, none of the lyrics of that are different from the stage version. So like, I would separate that out from this, but it all ties into the like monologue, that like brief monologue Glinda has right before she goes into it, where she was like, the power was inside of you all along. You just have to believe. Like that's what the classes were. I wrote down, it taught yourself about seeing oneself wholly. It focused on recognizing that you are who you are and you are a machine.
Wow.
And
oh my god, what is that play? What is that play about the machine? That we read in Hislet. Yes, it's the Sophie Treadwell mentality.
I didn't fully understand it because the Wikipedia page doesn't have like that good of an explanation. I mean, it has an explanation of like how the teaching went, where like you spend like 4 days at a retreat and then you can't look at your watch and you can't go to the bathroom. You're only allowed to go to the bathroom once a day, and there's only one meal break, and you have to sit in complete silence, and you're forced to sit in a circle in a room and just stare at each other, and then you like start to like go crazy and da-da-da-da-da. That energy of like the 70s, what I assume the 70s were like, it's very that. But I didn't fully understand it, and I didn't really want to look any further into it because I was so uncomfortable from just reading about that.
This was your opening sequence of the Munchkins.
But there was like a thing that was talking about like it's included in like that kind of like new agey late 60s. 70s,
so like that was kind of
Scientology.
That was kind of like a direction of why the ending is the way it is. But
yeah, and it was what some people had like problems with when they reviewed this movie, was that it seemed very annoyingly like that, which is weird because I would say it's not that it's not what the song is about.
Yeah,
the song is like Believe in Yourself, but they would say the song is more if it's not affixed to this like entire last 20-minute sequence where like this is all the same like buzzwords over and over and over, it works a little better than just being,
and
I feel
also
like being beaten over the head with it.
And also the visuals too of like this is an ethereal like Glinda, like it's not even really clear as to like, was she a small fairy? Was she like how did she appear to them?
Well, yeah, because she had the cyclone in her hand. So is she the universe?
Yeah, like it was never really clear as to like what her.
Yeah. I also, it's interesting that it was already in the stage version, because another thing that I read in the Martin article that I've been talking about is that another criticism that people have of it is that this is also very like bootstrappy narrative if you want to apply it like specifically to the Black community, which is like if you just applied yourself better, like everything would be okay. Like each individual person needs to do better rather than blaming systemic issues. And so, which I mean is like one interpretation. I'm not saying like that's what this movie is trying to say or the only way of reading it.
Interpretation.
Right. Yeah. But it was interesting to read an author sort of like of Black cultural history studies kind of stuff to, examining the different ways that this represented the Black community at the time, that it was one possible critique of the movie as well.
Which that's why like that you explaining the Est thing now kind of like does make sense now, feeding of like I am Alpha Omega. This is like I'm just energy. I'm the universe's energy. Like time, age is doesn't matter. Kind of.
Yeah, that was why Diana Ross could play Dorothy, because age doesn't matter in Est. So.
Well, let's end on that. So first, what we're going to go out on is Diana Ross's Home.
When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home. I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. When that makes the tall trees bend into leaning, suddenly the snowflakes that fall have a meaning, sprinkling the scene makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I have some direction. It would sure be nice to be back home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time in my life to grow up. Time, be my friend. Let me start again.
I was telling Adam, like, the main takeaway of The Wiz is this song. Like, this song is so good. And I was like, I feel like the entire legacy of this whole show is based on just how good this song is. Like,
I would say if there's two, if you were to expand it to two, it's this and Ease on Down the Road are the two songs that are like have lasting cultural impact.
Yeah.
It's as like culturally important as We're Off to See the Wizard,
mm-hmm.
which is like hard to do because We're Off to See the Wizard is like very well known too, but it's great.
Yeah, the song is really good, and I do like. By the time the song hit when we watched the movie, I was already kind of like, okay, it did kind of work on me, like the pathing of it was in you all along. Just as you explained to the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion, that they had like the heart, the brain, and courage, like that they always knew that they had, like they always wanted, like you also had it. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is working on me. But also I think like, yeah, it's not perfect of like just the shot of her, but something gay in me of just watching a woman just sing her entire, like just sing from all of her pores is just so cathartic. And I have to stand. So I even though I know, yes, like I think
I wish
like,
it wasn't shot the way it was shot.
Yeah, I think like just like my eyes could have used a break, obviously, like visually. Like this is also, it's crazy because after the song is done, you are immediately outside her building. She runs in, and
that's the end of the movie.
That's the end of the
It's
film.
a very abrupt ending.
So it's not even like it's not even like a 11 o'clock and then like a finale. It is the last.
Why are movie musicals allergic to finales?
Now what's going on?
Put a finale in one of these movies, please.
I would say also, well, we're gonna get one in our next movie, but I would say too that if you want like a really good time on YouTube, this is very genuine. I spent like maybe an hour looking up different like just community theater and like regional productions of The Wiz and Girls Singing Home. And they just always slay. As long as they're not white, they always slay.
Because
there were a few productions that had a full white cast, and I was like, what is going on?
Just do Oklahoma again. It's okay if you just did it.
Yeah.
Just do it again.
But I am going to end this segment with Stephanie Mills' Home, taken from that audio clip of an original performance in 1975. So hats off to this absolute powerhouse movie. Molly, it's February 15th. How are we doing on that PhD?
Not there.
Okay. Professional critics have said some things on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics' consensus is this workman-like movie musical lacks the electricity of the stage version and its cinematic inspiration, but it's bolstered by strong performances by Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. Now, I find it interesting they included Diana Ross because most of the professional criticism I saw was like, Diana Ross wasn't good. 41% on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert for the Chicago Sun-Times gave it a glowing review and said the movie has great moments and a lot of life, sensational special effects and costumes, and Ross, Jackson, and Russell. Why doesn't it involve us as deeply as The Wizard of Oz? Maybe it's because it hedges its bets by wanting to be sophisticated and universal, childlike and knowing, appealing to both a mass audience and to media insiders. The Wizard of Oz went flat out for the heart and its story. There are times when The Wiz has just a touch too much calculation. But mostly everything else in his review was like, I really liked it. I thought other critics were wrong for thinking it was bad. And then John Scow for Time wrote, what is wrong is the bankable star problem. This means that banks will not back a big film unless the star is someone even a banker has heard of. Thus, when you want to cast a black version of The Wizard of Oz, you do not hold an audition for beautiful teenage black girls who can sing like crazy, though the possibility of such an audition staggered the imagination. You sign up Diana Ross, who is beautiful, sings like crazy, and is known to bankers from a career dating back to the early 60s when she was the lead singer of the Supremes. Ross is 34, so the script calls for a Dorothy who is 24 and a shy school teacher. This is awkward because if the fantasy is to succeed, Dorothy must be childlike enough to be terrified of witches and wizards, and to talk trustingly with a scarecrow, a lion, and a tin man. A woman of 24 who is that innocent should not be teaching school.
Oh. This is really interesting that you picked that review to read because it was one of the ones that got quoted in the Martin article that I've been talking about that discussed criticism of the time. Oh. And I feel like Martin sort of implied that like this critic, along with another, a lot of white critics said that they did not like this movie, and he sort of like implied like this guy came up with a different excuse, but like I don't know. I think it might have also had to do with it being an all-black cast. I don't know that I believe this guy that was his real problem. Can I kind of give the like summary? I feel like
yes.
The Martin article.
Yeah.
So basically, Martin's article is about the fact that the film had this huge budget, so it relied on having a crossover audience that they wanted, obviously, black audiences to come and enjoy it, but they really needed white audiences to also come and see it. And he provides a lot of evidence about like where it was marketed, what theaters it was released in, and stuff that showed that they were like putting marketing dollars towards trying to get white people to come see it. The black press said they really liked it. Like I've been referencing, because they saw this turn from blaxploitation films, but also he talks a lot about this like pressure in the African-American community to like support any sort of black film and black media to like prove to box offices that black people will show up and they have dollars to spend, and like please continue to make these stories. And so he sort of also makes the case of like the black critics might have been like overly enthusiastic about it because they felt like this need to like encourage black audiences, like come see this big blockbuster black film. The white press, he said that a lot of those critics really got stuck on comparing it to the 1939 version, and especially like their attachment to Judy Garland as Dorothy, which kind of came up, I feel like, in the Ebert quote as well, of like instead of seeing it as its own thing, they kind of couldn't get past like, is Diana Ross doing a better job than Judy Garland did, essentially? And like, do I care about this movie more than I care about the 1939 version? He also says that feels like those critics sort of ghettoized it and sort of like framed it as like, this is a black movie and therefore it's like for black audiences and shouldn't basically be of interest to white audiences. And also that they talked a lot about their like concerns about the profits for the film and like whether it would make back this budget, and sort of makes this case of like, that itself sort of like presented the idea to people of like only black people will come see this film because like the critics are planting that idea of like, I'm concerned that like this won't be of interest to a white audience can kind of like be a self-fulfilling prophecy essentially. So I thought that was really interesting. And so it has over time become a hit, and it a lot of the way that a lot of people encountered it was through syndication and through it playing on TV. And he was saying that it's interesting because it came out before the home box office like market existed, and that he like was wondering if it would have had a different sort of like life had it come out at a time when people could get a tape or a CD or whatever of it. But that, so it feels like it's built up its sort of reputation over time, but that this author was saying basically like through a lot of things, including the criticism of white critics at the time, which I guess this was like a period where people really cared a lot about what critics said, that it sort of like doomed it to failure and not being presented as something that actually had the crossover appeal that the producers of the film were hoping it would have by having Diana Ross and Michael Jackson in it. So I think that's really interesting to think about like how the film has gone over time. Because RJ, I had a similar impression to you that like it's pretty well beloved. I think that might be partially though that like the stage musical, it seems like to me has like consistently been pretty produced and like part of the canon and stuff like that. So I think I hadn't ever really thought about, is there a difference between how people received and think about the stage musical versus the movie? I think there is. It's definitely, and
now that we are officially with West Side Story, now that we are officially in an era where like, go ahead and remake movie musicals that have been made before, I would like to see like a different interpretation of this that like, I don't know. I like the original stage kind of what it draws from. So I would like to see one that like, part of it, I think it is that I think they were scared to go with the full farmhouse thing specifically because they thought it might be too close to the 39 and they wanted to make sure that there was like a separation between the two. So I understand it in that regard. And I like all of the choices, the creative choices that they made to like change everything to New York because they went above and beyond to like find parallels for every part of this story. And it's not like they leave anything out really. They find something for everything. So it's cool in that regard. But I do think, again, I already said this earlier, so I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I do just think it works better if it is a younger Dorothy who like longs to see the outside world and in her experience of it is like both terrified and excited by it, the whole gamut of emotions, so that when she returns home, she feels like she's had the true like coming of age experience, which I think is like what the Wizard of Oz like kind of does, is that Dorothy, it's Dorothy's coming of age. So, but that's, just me. I do think it's a musical that I can't believe hasn't been officially done on Broadway since 1984. That's crazy.
Yeah.
There hasn't been an official Broadway production since then, which is like, I don't know. That's wild.
I was just going to say, please make a new version of this movie with less scary visuals. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
So on Letterboxd, Cameron gave it 3 stars and says, I thought Diana Ross was supposed to go to some fantasy version of New York, but this is exactly like the New York of the 70s. I know, right down to the killer trash cans. Samuel Fairweather gave it 4 stars and said, tag yourself, I'm teeny. And Kimi gave it 4 stars and said, if you don't like this movie, you're boring and you're also probably white.
Yeah, I mean, correct. Those are both true of me, so.
Yeah. Let's move on to a segment that we haven't done since our first episode back. We are doing a quiz.
It's the quiz. It's the Quizzard.
Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Okay. We're going to do it a little differently today. It's still going to be multiple choice questions. However, I'm not just going to go back and forth between you. I'm going to give you an option of numbers and then you pick. That way it doesn't feel like I have a set of easier questions for RJ or Molly, blah, 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 blah.
Mm.
So,
how Democrat.
Molly, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
There are 6 questions in total. I've written 7 down in case you both end up with a tied score, so I do have a tiebreaker.
Tied or have no correct answers.
So, Molly, pick a number between 1 and 7.
3.
The Munchkinland sequence was shot at the New York World's Fair Exposition Grounds in Flushing Meadow in Queens. What year was the World's Fair? A, 1965, B, 1966, C, 1964, or D, 1963?
I'm going to guess 64.
That is correct! Okay, RJ, number 1 to 7, do not pick 3.
1.
RJ, this is all New York based, by the way, because this is such a New York film. What historic New York landmark does the lion sit outside of? A, the Met, B, the New York Public Library, C, the Natural History Museum, or D, none, it was shot on a soundstage.
I'm going to guess B.
You are not incorrect. It was shot on a soundstage. Now, the soundstage is set up to look like the New York Public Library, but they decided that they couldn't get no one on the street in the same way, so they had it
Only they
rebuilt.
had just let there be extras.
Let people. He was trying to push people away, but they just wouldn't.
Molly, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
4.
What city does the Emerald City draw inspiration from in the novel? A, New York City, B, Kansas City, Missouri, C, St. Louis, or D, Chicago?
Oh man, I feel like Emerald is not helpful, and I can't think of anything that refers to. I'm just gonna go for Chicago.
You are correct. Ding, 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 ding. It specifically is referencing the 1893 Columbian Exposition. The White City is what it was drawing inspiration from.
Oh, so it's just like a different color name?
Yeah. Have you ever read Devil in the White City?
I read some of it, but I found the architecture stuff too boring. I just wanted to read the murder bits, so I didn't finish it.
Great. Great.
Buildings are boring. Hot take.
Hot take here. RJ, 2, 5, 6, 7.
2.
How long was the Chrysler Building the tallest building in the world?
Oh.
A, 3 years, B, 11 months, C, 18 months, or D, it never was. The Empire State Building started later but was finished first.
Well, I failed to get the trick question the first time, so I'll do it for this one. So I'm going to say D.
It is 11 months. It was the tallest building for 11 months, and then the Empire State Building was built. I also want to say Empire State Building, I think, was built in literally 9 months or something crazy, that whenever they talk about it, they're like, isn't it crazy what man could do back then? And I'm like, yeah, and unions didn't exist and there weren't codes and safety laws. It is really wild.
Anybody to be in that building.
Okay, Molly, 5, 6, 7.
5.
Of the 5 New York City boroughs, which one holds Coney Island? A, Queens, B, Staten Island, C, Brooklyn, or D, none. It's actually in Long Island, which isn't a borough.
I have no idea, so I'm going to go D.
It is in Brooklyn.
I did not know that.
It is in Brooklyn. It's I think the end of one of the lines. Okay, RJ, last one, 6 or 7? 6. What subway station is home to the horror section of this film? A, the Hoyt-Schermerhorn station, B, Chambers Street, C, Fulton Street, or D, Jackson Heights?
Fulton.
Incorrect. It is the Hoyt-Schermerhorn station, and ironically, this is also the same station that the Michael Jackson music video Bad was filmed at as well. Fun fact.
He has such fond memories of filming this scene that he wanted to go back there.
Well, Molly officially won. She got 2 points and RJ got a big 0. Does anyone want to do the last question I had just for fun?
Sure, throw it out for both of us.
Okay. What now defunct attraction was home to the Winged Monkeys biker gang chase sequence? Was it A, the Central Park parking garage? Was it B, Shea Stadium? Was it C, the Queen's Amphitheater? Or was it D, the original Port Authority?
I think we should both give a letter and then see who's right.
Yeah, okay. I'll do D.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's B, the stadium.
Molly is right again. Wow. Molly is queen of the Big Apple.
Molly is the queen of New York.
My vast knowledge from visiting twice, maybe 3 times. I don't even remember how many times I've been to New York.
She retains the info.
Yeah. Okay, so I wrote down, I feel like the obvious question is what musical do you want to see an all blaxploitation inspired version of? So you can answer that question, or the alternative question is, what musical would you like to take and put into like a modern urban setting? I think either option is interesting.
Okay, I'll answer first because I already picked up one right off the bat.
Good.
I want to see Phantom of the Opera, but in the Harlem Renaissance.
Oh.
So make it all jazz. And it's still like the same kind of style where it's like a creepy guy and a ingenue. But yeah, that at like the Apollo Theater would be like amazing.
Cool.
Write that. I won't write it because I'm white, but someone who's not white should write that.
I'll support that.
I haven't thought of a great answer. You would think I would come up with better answers to my own questions, but I would like to see Carousel in like an urban modern setting, but I just mostly want it to be, and then everybody tells the protagonist he's a really bad person, and instead of it being about him being okay.
By a modern urban setting, you mean I just want accountability for the main.
I just
want it to be in 2022, and I want him to be Harvey Weinstein.
I want it to be set in modern day, and I want someone to turn it to him and say, it's actually not okay that you hate your wife. That's actually not what we're trying to say with this.
Molly, you're gonna be so upset that when we go back to our calendar that I really want to do Carousel in June.
I mean, we have to. We have to do it.
I don't know about like what story, but modern urban setting, modern urban version setting, it would be cool to like see adaptations happen of like specific like actual urban neighborhoods of cities. So like I'm thinking like a Chinatown or like a Koreatown like setting of like a musical, but like an adaptation of a musical I think would be cool. I mean, not really stick to we just watched Tragedy of Macbeth, so I'm like it would be cool to see like obviously like a Shakespeare in like a very tight setting like that.
Has to be a musical, RJ. Come on.
But there's
Showgays.
gotta be, yeah. I mean like
we saw when RJ and I lived in Orlando and we went to the Orlando Fringe Festival one year, they had a production called Elwiz, which was like a Latinx.
Yeah, like
what did we decide? We don't know. A Latino version.
I think is
yeah. A Latino version of the Wiz. And it was
like Puerto
Rican. Fine. It was pretty Puerto Rican. It was fine. It was like Orlando, but it was I would say it had good bones and like interesting because they set it I think in the Hurricane Maria, so they set it on Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria, which was cool.
Interesting.
Not cool, obviously. But.
Adam is pro hurricane.
Cancelled again. Canceled twice on the same podcast.
I mean, like, yeah, I would throw like a golden age, like you said, Carousel. I would throw like a golden age story, or even something fun like a She Loves Me. That would be fun to do, like a fun cotton candy rom-com-y musical like She Loves Me.
Or do like Guys and Dolls, but in like current Las Vegas.
Ooh.
I did also have the thought, but I was like, now I'm getting way too far afield of my original question. But I was like, it would be cool to take Guys and Dolls and put it in a super rural setting. Just invert it.
Guys and Dolls does Oklahoma.
They're like trying to get to the craps game, and it's taking them forever to like get there on their tractor.
And by craps game, it's just like the slots at like the local bar. Like it's
it all takes place at a Native American casino.
Oh no!
Good Lord!
Oh no!
The Sioux,
the Chippewa. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for listening to another
episode of Showgays that's longer than the movie.
Yeah, which is hard to do with this one. This was a long movie, but we still got there, everyone.
We still got there.
Welcome.
Don't you fret. We are always there to make sure that we take too much time to talk about a film.
You've got a long car ride ahead. Put on Showgays.
I will say that's been our biggest demographic is like travel. We're a go-to travel podcast where it's like, I gotta kill 4 hours in the car. Fire up the old Evan Hansen.
Everybody's talking about Jamie. That'll get me from here to New York.
All right. Till next time. Yay.
Bye.
Can you feel a brand new day? Can you feel a brand new day. Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is at Adam Noecker on Twitter. RJ is at RJ Food Rocks on Instagram. And Molly is at Molly Matiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgazemoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
What does sueñito mean?
Sueñito. It means little dream.
That's it? No story?
All right, everybody sit down. It's a story of a block that was disappearing. In un barrio called Washington Heights. The streets were made of music.
I am Usnavi, and you probably never heard my name. Reports of my fame are greatly exaggerated. Morning, Usnavi. Pan caliente, café con leche.
On these blocks, you can't walk 2 steps without bumping into someone's big plan.
I'm making moves, I'm making deals, but guess what? What? You still ain't got no skills.
I've been saving up all my pennies in my piggy bank for this day.
This is going to be an emotional roller coaster. The odds are against you.
But there's a chance, right? A dream isn't some sparkly diamond. There's no shortcuts. Sometimes it's rough.
Yeah, I'm a street light choking on the heat. The world spins around while I'm frozen to my seat. The people that I know.
They're talking about kicking out all the dreamers.
But every day is different, so
it's time to make some noise.
We had to assert our dignity in small ways.
Shh. Just listen.
Little details that tell the world we are not invisible.
Ignore anyone who doubts you.
In the heights, I came returned upon display.
We came to work and to live, and we got a lot in common.
I came from miles away.
DRPR, we are not stopping.
Every day, 6 days
until the day we go from poverty to stock options. Today's all we got, so we cannot stop. This is our block. In the heights.
Discovering voices, building worlds, the Ampliverse.